They handed her a sniper rifle just to hold, not to aim, not to shoot, just to stand there like a coat rack. "Don't touch it, sweetheart. That scope costs more than your future." That's what Staff Sergeant Maddox told her. What he didn't know was that she had learned to shoot for free on mountains that didn't forgive second chances. And that rifle? It was safer in her hands than in his. That day in the desert, she didn't just pull the trigger. She pulled the rug out from under every man who ever underestimated her. Long before she ever held a sniper rifle worth 6 figures, she held a .22 bolt action her father kept behind the wood stove. Her name was Riley Prescott, and she was raised not in barracks or bases, but in the wild, wind-carved valleys of western Montana. Her earliest memories weren't of playgrounds or parades. They were of frost on the barrel, of breath held in stillness, and of her father's voice saying one thing: "Don't fight the wind, Riley, read it." He wasn't a gentleman, but he was a patient one. Gunnery Sergeant Samuel Prescott, 2 tours in. Desert storm, 1 Purple Heart, and a back broken in more ways than just physical. When he came home, he didn't talk about war. He just taught her how to survive. He taught her how snow whispered when it was about to fall, how dust danced before the wind changed, how shadows moved half a second before the animals did, and most of all, he taught her to never rely on machines to do a hunter's work. By age 9, Riley could drop a jackrabbit at 200 yards. By 11, she could track elk across frozen ridges. And by 12, she made a shot no adult in her father's hunting group believed until they walked the slope and saw the clean lung hit themselves. He didn't celebrate with high fives or big words. He just cleaned the rifle, nodded once, and said, "You're ready for wind I can't teach." Riley's childhood wasn't filled with sleepovers or cheerleading practice. Her walls weren't covered with pop stars. They were covered with paper targets, wind maps, and elevation charts. She had no prom date, but she knew the ballistic drop of a .308 round at 1,000 yards by heart. Every weekend was another lesson: crosswinds, mirage, incline, breath control. She didn't know it at the time, but her backyard was building the foundation for a future the world would one day call impossible. She learned to shoot not when conditions were perfect, but when they were cruel: rain, fog, sleet after hiking, 6 miles before sunrise, after arguments when her fingers were numb. Because as her father always said, you don't get to choose your moment, but you better be ready when it chooses you. One winter, they camped in -10 degrees just to track a single bull elk her father spotted 2 days earlier. He never said it, but that trip was a test. She passed, made the shot. 1 chance, 1 breath, 1 bullet. They butchered in silence. And under that gray sky as blood steamed in the snow, he handed her the rifle and said, "You don't need anyone's permission to be good." Back at school, no one cared. No one understood. They called her weird, tomboy, quiet girl, that girl with deer guts on her boots. But she didn't care, because in her heart she was building something they couldn't see: a rhythm, a calm, a sense of presence no screen or trophy could ever give her. The local gun range owner, an old Vietnam sniper named Mr. Harland, once watched her hit a moving target in crosswind without hesitation. He took off his cap and said, "You've got what computers can't replicate." That sentence stuck with her more than any school award. So by the time a military recruiter came through town her senior year, Riley already knew her path. She wasn't chasing medals. She wasn't chasing status. She was chasing clarity, the kind that only comes when the whole world narrows down to crosshairs, breath, and the stillness between 2 beats of your heart. She didn't grow up to be a shooter. She grew up already being one. The military just hadn't met her yet. The first thing they gave her at Sierra Run wasn't a rifle. It was a clipboard, the kind that says you're here to take notes, not to take shots. The testing range sprawled across 50 miles of open desert. It was where the Army's top-tier long-range systems went to prove themselves or fail spectacularly. On that day under the scorching sun, the XM27 Longshot was the star of the show, a next-generation sniper platform worth $40 million. It had a scope that could think faster than a squad of humans, or so they claimed. And beside it stood staff. Sergeant Cole Maddox, chest puffed out, voice loud, swagger louder. He looked at Riley like she was a janitor who wandered into the wrong hangar. "You're here to observe, Prescott. You don't touch the rifle. You don't adjust the settings. You don't speak unless spoken to." "Got it?" Riley nodded. "Crystal clear, Sergeant." They laughed at her quietness, mistook it for weakness. They didn't know. She was measuring the wind with her fingertips, didn't notice her eyes tracking the flags, the heat shimmer, the dust devils curling across the flatlands. While they huddled over data tablets and recalibrated their failure, Riley was doing math. In her head, ballistic arc, drop compensation, barometric drift, mirage layers, all without touching the screen. Because she'd been here before, not in name but in essence. Every ridge in Montana was a testing range. Every deer was a target that didn't wait. Maddox missed again, third time in a row. The 2,250-meter target stood untouched. "Scope's off," he muttered. "Computer's not adjusting right." Captain Avery Holt checked his clipboard. They needed one confirmed hit at max range before the day ended. The tension started to rise. Tempers flared. Pressure mounted. Then during the water break, Maddox shoved the rifle into Riley's hands. "Hold this. Don't mess with it." She nodded, but her fingers naturally found the rifle's balance point. She felt the micro-tension in the trigger, noted the weight shift, saw the overcompensation in the scope alignment. It wasn't just a rifle. It was a message machine, and it was screaming the wrong solution. Maddox caught her looking too closely. "You think you could do better?" He smirked. "I didn't say that, Sergeant." "No, but you've been giving me those looks." "Go ahead, enlighten us." Captain Holt was about to cut in, but Maddox insisted. "It's a testing environment, right? Let her speak." Riley could feel the trap. If she said nothing, she was weak. If she spoke up, she was arrogant. So she chose a third option, truth. The manual and the auto systems are canceling each other out. She said, calm and clear, "You're adjusting manually, but the computer thinks it's a mistake, so it's correcting the correction." Silence, like a pin dropped in a church full of ego. "Go full manual or go full auto," she added, "but not both." Maddox's face went red. 15 years in Special Forces, and he was just out-analyzed by the girl holding the clipboard. "You're here because some diversity program needed a box checked, not because you belong. No one defended her, not yet." Captain Holt stepped in to stop the confrontation, but the damage had already been done. As Maddox walked past, he bumped her shoulder deliberately. "This is men's work, sweetheart. Try not to break a nail." Riley said nothing, but her eyes didn't follow him. They stayed fixed on the steel target in the distance, still untouched. Because in her head, she was already adjusting for crosswind, calculating the humidity, feeling the spiral of desert heat rising through the valley. She wasn't holding the clipboard anymore. She was holding back a storm. And that storm was about to arrive in the form of one impossible shot. The heat was relentless, as if the sun itself was angry. Target 7 Alpha sat in the distance, 2,950 meters of impossible. The kind of shot that makes even experienced shooters nervous. The kind of shot no one had landed. 5 missed attempts. 5 expensive, frustrating failures. Captain Holt checked. His watch, last shot, then we pack it up. Maddox stepped up one last time. Tension was thick. The technical team murmured under their breath. Another miss. Maddox cursed, tossed the rifle to a technician, and started to walk away. Everyone began packing up. Defeat was in the air. But then she stepped forward, Riley, quiet, steady, resolute. "Captain Holt, request permission for one shot." The entire range went still. Even the wind paused to listen. Maddox laughed out loud. Are you serious? You think you can do what Special Forces couldn't? She didn't look at him. She didn't need to. One shot, she said calmly. If I miss, I'll accept. Full disciplinary action. The captain hesitated. Then a voice from the technical team spoke up. Sir, from a research standpoint, more data never hurts. Captain Holt looked at the failed logs, then back at Riley. He nodded once. One shot, Prescott. Make it count. The technician holding the rifle hesitated, then handed it over. Riley didn't rush. She didn't posture. She didn't crack her knuckles or spit or grin. She just stood there, holding the XM27 like it was a familiar friend. She looked through the scope, then turned off the computer assist. Manual mode, all of it. What is she doing? Someone whispered. She disabled all the smart systems. She's flying. Blind? No, she wasn't. She was flying from memory, from Montana wind tunnels, from childhood ridgelines and hunting grounds that taught her more about long-range physics than any classroom ever could. She lay prone, shouldered the rifle, checked the mirage waves, felt the breeze with her cheek, adjusted the scope manually. 3 clicks left, 2 clicks up. Then she waited, not rushed, not nervous. She was patient. She was still. She was home. 1 breath in, half released. No flinch, no drama, just crack. The shot rang across the valley like a whisper wrapped in thunder. Silence followed, all eyes glued to the spotting scope. Nothing, then dust a puff, direct hit center mass. The computer beeped once. A cold, emotionless voice spoke. Target hit confirmed. Range 2,950 meters. First round. Manual mode. Gasps. Maddox turned white. The tech team scrambled around her. How? That shouldn't be possible. Did the system glitch? Captain Holt didn't speak at first. Then slowly. Prescott, how did you do that? She stood, calm as ever. The scope and computer were overcompensating, but the valley has a thermal vortex pattern. You can't model that. You have to feel it. Dr. Winters, the lead engineer, stepped forward. That was beyond statistical probability. That was art. Across the field, Maddox stared at her, and for the first time all day, he didn't speak, because there was nothing left to say. One shot didn't just hit the target. It hit every ego that ever stood in her way. It made the impossible undeniable. But some men don't accept truth. They try to rewrite it or bury it. And that's exactly what Maddox tried to do. Sometimes the bullet isn't what kills you. It's what comes after. Whispers, doubt, politics, rank. The moment Riley hit that target, the desert air changed. But so did the rules. Because not everyone wanted the truth, and no one hated it more than Staff Sergeant Maddox. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just walked off the range in silence and filed a formal complaint less than 2 hours later. The charge: unauthorized use of experimental equipment by unqualified personnel. He claimed her actions were reckless, that she disobeyed direct orders, that she endangered the integrity of the test. It was his last move, a desperate one. But sometimes desperate men with stripes can still make people nervous. The next morning, Riley was called into a conference room. Waiting inside were Captain Holt, Colonel Marcus Ellison, and 3 unfamiliar faces from Army R&D. No one smiled. No one offered coffee. Colonel Ellison started without small talk. Private Prescott, did you fire the XM27 yesterday without authorization? Riley sat straight. Sir, I requested permission. Captain Holt approved 1 round. Holt nodded. That's correct. Ellison leaned back. And what made you think you were qualified to attempt a shot no one else could make? She answered plainly, I didn't think, sir. I knew. There was a pause. Then one of the R&D officials spoke. We've reviewed the footage. Your adjustments were manual. Your calculations were instinctive, but your results? They're beyond anything. We've recorded, another added. That's not just skill. That's pattern recognition beyond current software. Colonel Ellison finally nodded. You made the shot. That's a fact. The rest we'll deal with. But as they dismissed her, Riley knew this wasn't over. She didn't fear the complaint. She feared the message that no matter how clean your shot was, someone could still try to erase it. That night, Maddox cornered her outside the mess hall. No witnesses, just shadow and anger. You think you're safe now? You embarrassed me in front of everyone. She didn't answer. This army wasn't built for people like you, he hissed. You're a PR stunt with a trigger finger. She didn't move, didn't blink, just said, I'm still the only one who hit the target. The next morning, command made it official. Maddox's complaint was dismissed. Footage from the range proved everything. Audio confirmed Holt's approval. Telemetry verified the shot. But something else happened too. A call came in, not from Sierra Run, from Fort Benning, from the Army Marksmanship Unit. They had reviewed the footage. They wanted to meet the girl who didn't miss. One bullet had opened a door. But behind that door was an entire world Riley never imagined she'd walk into. The plane touched down at Fort Benning with a low, even hum. It wasn't the kind of landing Riley noticed anymore. She was used to turbulence outside the aircraft. Georgia humidity wrapped around her like a wet blanket. A staff sergeant waited beside a military SUV holding a clipboard. Private Prescott? Yes, Sergeant. Name's Wilson. I'll be taking you to the MU, the Army Marksmanship Unit, the place where legends trained, where Olympic-level shooters fine-tuned their instinct, where the best of the best got even better. Riley had heard stories, but stories never smelled like gun oil and Georgia pines. They never looked like steel targets over rolling terrain. As they drove through the secluded campus, Wilson glanced at her in the mirror. Word about that shot spread fast. She didn't answer. Just a heads up, these guys don't take kindly to surprise talents. I'm used to that, she said quietly. They pulled up to a modern training facility. 3 officers waited at the entrance, 1 in dress uniform, 2 in fatigues. The oldest stepped forward. Private Prescott, I'm Colonel Davis, commander of the AMU. This is Major Peterson and Captain Grant, heads of long-range precision training. She saluted. Reporting as ordered, sir. Davis nodded. Let's get one thing straight, Private. What you did at Sierra Run was extraordinary. But extraordinary doesn't mean repeatable. Yes, sir. 2 hours later, Riley was lying prone on the MU's long-range course. A crowd had gathered. Among them, Staff Sergeant Tyler Reeve, current long-range champion. Tall, built like a linebacker, calm as ice. He gave her a nod, not friendly, not hostile, just professional. Ladies first, he said. Riley took position behind the M110 SAS rifle. She didn't overthink, didn't over-aim. She just read the wind, the shadows, the trees, and fired. 5 shots. All hits, tight grouping, barely a 2-inch spread. The murmurs started immediately. Reeve stepped up next, matched her grouping for the first 4 shots. Then a gust of wind swept across the range, a shift, sudden, subtle. He hesitated, recalculated. Fired, slightly off, still excellent but not perfect. Major Peterson turned. Private Prescott wins the round. No cheers, just silence, the kind of silence that listens. Reeve approached her afterward. That last gust, you saw it coming, didn't you? 30 seconds before it hit the line, she nodded. Leaves on the east side started. Fluttering, he raised an eyebrow. Situational awareness. She nodded again. My father taught me to watch everything, not just the target. Reeve paused. Your father, what was his name? Samuel Prescott, gunnery sergeant, Marine Scout sniper. Reeve blinked. The Prescott? Fallujah hotel shot? Riley's eyes widened. You knew him? I knew of him, Reeve said. He shot over 4 grounded helicopters. It's still in the training videos. He extended his hand. Didn't make the connection until now. Welcome to the big leagues. She shook his hand, and in that moment, the test became something else. It wasn't just about a miracle shot anymore. She was no longer the girl from Sierra Run. She was her father's legacy and her own future. The next morning, the selection course began. 20 shooters, 3 spots. Obstacle shooting, stress drills, night ops, wind, fatigue, doubt. They dropped like flies, one by one. But Riley stayed, not flawless but focused, not faster but steadier. She didn't just shoot, she endured. By the end of the week, 5 remained: Riley, Reeve, and 3 decorated veterans. Colonel Davis gathered them before the final challenge. 1 shot, 2,200 meters, after a half-mile run. 1 hit or you're out. Riley tightened her boots, checked her scope, and remembered Montana mornings. Reeve fell in beside her. They designed this test because of you know. She nodded. They want to see if Sierra Run was lightning or thunder. The course began. Half a mile, full gear, adrenaline surging. She dropped into position with 28 seconds left. Wind, breath, silence, shot, impact confirmed. Target down. Colonel Davis walked over, hand outstretched. Congratulations, Specialist Prescott. Your promotion paperwork is already processed. Behind him, even the skeptics clapped, not because they had to, but because they meant it. She came to prove 1 shot wasn't luck. Now she'd earned her place among the best, but fate wasn't done testing her yet. Because her next shot wouldn't be on a range. It would be in the mountains, in combat, at the edge of what's humanly possible. 3 days after earning her AIMU badge, Riley was summoned to Colonel Davis's office. But this time, she wasn't alone. 2 men in suits were already seated. They didn't look like officers, but they carried themselves like predators. The older one stood first. Specialist Prescott, I'm David Rourke. This is Sean McAllister. We're with Joint Special Operations Command. She saluted, cautious. We've been following your progression since Sierra Run, Rourke said. And we have a situation, one that needs your particular skill set. The folder they handed her was thick, half of it redacted, but 3 words stood out in bold: Operation Mountain Shadow. The objective: eliminate a high-value arms dealer named Alexander Volkov. Location: deep in a hostile mountain valley. Distance to target: 2,850 meters. No drones, no airstrike, too many civilians nearby. They needed 1 shot from 1 person. Who didn't miss? Riley didn't ask for time to consider. She didn't need it. When do I leave? Now, McAllister replied. Pack light. 20 hours later, she was on a military transport. Beside her sat 6 operators from Task Force Sierra, an elite unit so secret, most soldiers only heard rumors. Their leader, Captain Noah Stratton, laid it out clearly. We're moving through cold mountains at high elevation. Minimal support, max risk. They would hike 60 kilometers over rugged terrain, set up a single sniper nest, wait for 1 window, and then disappear. One of the team's senior snipers, Master Sergeant Trent Mason, studied her closely. You ever made a shot in mountain thermals under real pressure? Riley met his gaze. Only when dinner depended on it. The teen chuckled. Even Mason gave a nod. She wasn't here for small talk. She was here to deliver. 3 days in the mountains. No fire, no talking, just cold, altitude, and silence. When they finally reached the overlook, Volkov's compound came into view, guarded, elevated, perfectly arrogant. A single shot could end it all if the wind played nice, but the wind never did. Riley and Mason set up the rifle, a custom Mk-22 with hand-loaded rounds. Mason scanned the terrain. This valley eats bullets for breakfast. Wind bounces off 3 faces before it even hits the target. Riley squinted through the spotting scope. No, it dances. She pointed. North slope pushes, east face curls, then it spirals center. Mason raised his eyebrows. You're reading that from heat shimmer? I'm reading it from how the trees lean and how the dust rises. 3 hours later, confirmation came. Volkov would be in his east-facing office for exactly 6 minutes. That was their shot. But there was a problem. His windows were bulletproof. Except for one spot, a seam between panels where the glass met the steel frame, 4 inches wide. Riley would have to thread that gap at 2,850 meters through chaotic wind and fading daylight. That seam is a whisper, Mason said. It's suicide. Riley didn't flinch. It's doable. Stratton gave the green light. All right, sniper. Do what you came to do. She lay prone, checked the wind meters, watched the patterns, ignored the numbers, trusted her senses. 10 seconds. Volkov stepped into frame. 5 seconds, the breeze shifted. 3 seconds, she inhaled, held it, and fired. The silence was deafening. Then a shatter, a collapse. One body down. Mason's voice came through comms. Target down, confirmed. They packed up in less than 2 minutes. No one said a word until extraction. In the helicopter, Stratton looked at her. That wasn't just a shot. That was history. Mason added quietly, that seam, no one else would have even tried. She didn't gloat. She just closed her eyes and for the first time in days, slept. 3 days later, back on U.S. soil, Colonel Davis greeted her with a new rank pin in hand. Sergeant Riley Prescott, welcome to Task Force Sierra, effective immediately. Some people are made for the range. Others are made for the mission. But Riley? She was made for both. And the world was just starting. To notice. 6 months passed in a blur. Briefings, missions, debrief, repeat. By now, Riley Prescott wasn't just that girl from Sierra Run. She was a quiet presence with a growing legend behind her name. But Command had something else in mind. They didn't just want her to shoot. They wanted her to teach. So one crisp morning, at Fort Bragg, Riley stood in front of a room filled with elite snipers. Army, Navy, SEALs, Marine Recon, Special Forces, all gathered to learn from a sergeant. Most had more years behind a rifle than she had birthdays. They didn't hide their skepticism. She saw it in their crossed arms, their raised eyebrows, their silence. But she was used to that, and she came prepared. Riley stepped to the whiteboard. No PowerPoint, no lasers, just a single phrase written. In clean block letters, Winde doesn't lie, but it never speaks twice. Then she turned around and said, let's talk about the one thing your scopes can't see. For the next hour, she broke it down, not with numbers, but with instinct, with the rhythm of the earth, the language of leaves, the dance of dust. She showed video footage of 3 confirmed kills, shots that on paper looked impossible, but through her lens made perfect sense. She explained how different altitudes created air rivers, how sun-heated rock faces pushed invisible currents, how you could read all that not from instruments, but from silence. One grizzled Navy SEAL in the back raised a hand. With all due respect, Sergeant, reading thermal layers like that, that's science fiction without sensors. Riley nodded. That's what I thought too, until I saw my father read it without ever touching a screen. She paused. You don't need to see heat. You need to see how heat changes the world around it. The room went quiet. Then General Douglas Vance himself walked in, commanding officer of JSOC. All conversation stopped. As you were, he said. Then he turned to the room. This woman, he motioned to Riley, has made 3 shots this past year that our algorithms said were impossible. And yet here she stands, not with a theory, but with results. He looked around. What she's teaching you today isn't in any manual, because no one else can do what she does. Then he nodded to Riley. Carry on, Sergeant. The rest of the session went differently. Questions came faster. Skepticism softened. Notes were taken, not because her rank demanded it, but because her eyes did. They saw Winde after class, Riley. Found General Vance waiting outside. They walked together in silence for a while. Then he said, "The President has taken an interest in you, Prescott. Not just your shot, but what it represents." She stayed quiet. "We're organizing an international special operations competition next month," he continued. "Best snipers from Allied nations, SAS, JTF2, Sayuri Matkal." He stopped walking. "We want you to represent the United States." She blinked, not from surprise but from the weight of it. "Yes, sir," she said. He smiled. "And one more thing. The head instructor at the Advanced Sniper School is retiring. Your name's on the short list." She shook her head slightly. "Sir, I'm still junior, which is why we're promoting you." He paused. "Captain Monroe has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? She came to the Army with no one believing in her. Now the world was watching, and a new battlefield was calling. But before she could step into that arena, something darker was rising overseas, and Riley was about to face her most dangerous mission. Yet, they called him the broker, a shadow figure, an arms dealer, a ghost who never stayed in one place long enough to be caught. Satellite intel placed him at a remote fortress in the Karakoram range. High altitude, thick air, unpredictable weather, too risky for drones, too many blind spots for teams. And the window, 30 seconds, one moment, one exposed corridor, one man. Walking across it, that was all. And for that, they sent Captain Riley Prescott. The mission file was classified above her rank, but the target, she recognized his face. He once sold weapons to rebels who downed a helicopter in Syria. Her friend had bet on that bird. This wasn't just a shot. It was a reckoning. The team was small. 3 operators, 2 techs, Riley. They were dropped 12 kilometers from the target under darkness, no lights, no radios, just movement and breath. They ascended with gear that felt heavier than gravity. Altitude clawed at their lungs, but Riley kept pace. She wasn't chasing oxygen. She was chasing focus. By dawn, they reached the overlook. The compound sat below, carved into the cliffside. Like a scar, guards everywhere. But that corridor, the one between the satellite tower and command quarters, it had no roof. And it would host the broker at exactly 10 a.m. The wind was chaos, not strong but wild. It twisted in half circles, it pulsed in waves. No computer could model it, but Riley wasn't reading numbers. She was reading rhythm. She lay prone, wrapped in white camo, her heart rate steady, her breath even. Through the scope, the world shrank. It was no longer a fortress, no longer a target. It was just distance and movement. At 10:05, the broker stepped into view, slow, unbothered, holding a cup of tea like it was a casual stroll. The wind shifted, then paused just enough. Riley saw it in the trees 2 ridges away, a moment of stillness no system could have detected. She exhaled halfway, held it, and squeezed. The round screamed across the air like a promise. It curved, it drifted. Then impact. The broker dropped. Cup shattered. Guards didn't even react at first. That's how long it took for sound to travel. Target neutralized, her earpiece confirmed. No alarms triggered. Clean exit. They packed up in under 3 minutes. No high fives, no celebration, just silence. Back at base, General Vance reviewed the kill footage in disbelief. Threaded through a 4-inch gap at almost 3,000 meters in rotational wind, McAllister from JSOC leaned back in his chair. She's not just good. She's redefining what's possible. Riley sat alone in her quarters that night, a photo in her hand, faded edges, her father and her on a Montana ridge. He used to say, "Some ghosts you don't shoot, you outlast them." But tonight, she'd done both. The next morning, an encrypted message arrived. Return to Bragg. Debrief in 6 hours. New orders pending. Under it, a second line. Welcome to Phase. 2. She thought she'd already climbed the highest peak, but the mountain ahead wasn't physical. It was built of politics, command, and choices no bullet could solve. Not every mission leaves a scar. Some leave silence, and silence, Riley learned, weighs more than steel. Back at Fort Bragg, the debrief was short, the shot was clean. The mission: flawless, no civilian casualties, no political blowback. Just a name scratched off a list like it had never existed. But that was the problem, because it had. She sat across from McAllister and Rourke. They didn't say congratulations. They didn't say thank you. They said stand by for phase 2. And just like that, the ghost she killed was forgotten, except by her. That night, she didn't sleep. She replayed the moment over and over, the inhale, the stillness, the shot. Everything was perfect, except the echo. It stayed. 2 days later, she received a new assignment, not a mission, a teaching post. Acting lead. Advanced Ballistics Training Division. Temporary. But everyone knew that was code for "we're watching." General Vance briefed her personally. "We want your methods taught across units, not just your technique, your awareness, what you see that machines can't." She nodded, but inside something churned. Her first week back in the classroom was harder than any battlefield. She wasn't fighting targets. She was fighting pride. Men who refused to believe a 20-something captain had more to teach than their decades of service. They didn't say it out loud, but she saw it. The crossed arms, the forced nods, the way they only raised questions when the room was full. One day during the simulation, a student missed a 1,200-meter shot. He blamed the scope, then the ammunition, then the wind. Riley didn't scold. She handed him a printout of wind patterns from 2 ridgelines away, then pointed to a video frame showing grass bending 4 seconds before the shot. "The warning was there," she said. "You just didn't know where to look." No anger, no judgment, just truth, the kind that doesn't shout, it just waits. Later that evening, Reeve, now stationed at Bragg, knocked on her office door. "Still teaching ghosts how to listen?" He smirked. She almost smiled. Some days I wonder if the ghosts are listening back." He sat down across from her. "They gave you the kill, the medal, and the lecture hall. So why do you still look? Like you're in a sniper's nest?" She looked down at her hands. "Because silence doesn't end when the shot lands." Reeve leaned forward. "I get it. But don't mistake silence for loneliness." "What is it then?" "Respect," he said. "The kind you earn by doing what most people wouldn't even dare try." He stood to leave. "Teach them, Riley, and maybe you'll sleep again." She didn't answer. But the next morning, her lesson began with a new phrase on the board. "You don't fire to prove, you fire to preserve." They listened for the first time, really listened, not because she outranked them, not because she had medals, but because she carried something none of them could fake, the weight of silence. Some soldiers carry rifles, some carry maps, but the rarest of all carry the memory of what one shot can mean. And Riley Prescott was about to face the one mission where silence wouldn't follow her, because the world would be watching. They held it in the Swiss Alps, the first international sniper invitational in over a decade. 12 nations, 24 shooters, 0 second chances. Each country sent 2, their best. Riley Prescott was one of them. As the plane touched down in Zurich, she looked out the window at the mountains. White, silent, unforgiving, not unlike the ranges she'd known her whole life. But this time, she wasn't hiding in camouflage. She was wearing the flag, and every eye in the room wanted to see if the legend was real. Her teammate was Sergeant Damien Holt, a seasoned marksman from Delta Force. Sharp, efficient, quiet. The two barely spoke the first day, but Riley didn't mind. Some warriors fight best in silence. The course was brutal, 6 days, 10 stages, each. Designed to push limits, high-altitude shots, crosswind corridors, moving targets at over 2,000 meters, blind fire simulations, and a final gauntlet called the Walk. 1 kilometer of unpredictable terrain, only one bullet allowed. Hit or miss, your ranking lived or died with it. On day 3, a British SAS shooter pulled Riley aside. "So you're the wind reader?" "Yeah," she shrugged. "I just pay attention." He smiled. "They're saying you see things no drone can track." She looked. "At the ridge ahead. I don't see everything." I just stopped pretending the world is still . By day 5, the leaderboard looked tight. Canada, UK, Israel all ahead, America 3rd place. Everything would come down to the walk. The night before the final, Holt knocked on her cabin door. "You ready?" he asked. She looked up from her rifle. "Always. We only need one of us to hit tomorrow," he said. "But I'd rather it be you." She raised an eyebrow. "Why?" He paused. "Because no one here represents more than you do." Morning came with ice in the air. The walk was solo. No spotter, no communications, just you, your rifle, and a single silhouette target 2,300 meters out, barely visible. Between trees. No wind meter, no range finder, only instinct. Riley walked slow. Each footstep tested the ground. She paused twice, once to check tree flutter, once to feel the air shift on her cheek. Then she saw it, the shape, the shadow, the opportunity. She sat up prone, focused. She watched a bird cross from left to right, then change course mid a hidden gust. She adjusted, then saw something else. Heat shimmer bending toward the left. Another adjustment. She closed her eyes, breathed, then opened them and fired. The echo ran for miles, but no one said a word, not until the red flag rose on the range. Tower. Hit. When she returned to base, Holt was waiting. "So?" he asked. She just nodded. "We're bringing it home." Later that night, the scoreboard lit up. First place, United States. She didn't smile for the cameras, didn't raise her fists, didn't shout. She just stood at attention while they played the anthem. And when they handed her the medal, she didn't see gold. She saw her father's hands guiding hers on that ridge in Montana. She saw the long road, the silence, the ghosts, all leading to this moment. Back in the States, she declined interviews, declined promotion offers, even declined a teaching chair. Instead, she went back to the MU, to the same range, and waited until the day a young private, nervous, quiet, overlooked, asked Captain Prescott, "How do you know when to pull the trigger?" She smiled, not big but real. "When the world goes quiet, and you finally hear yourself." Epilogue. Some heroes walk off battlefields to thunderous applause. Riley Prescott walked away from hers into the kind of silence you earn, the kind that never needed to be loud to change the world. One flag, one shot, and one soldier who never missed because she never forgot what mattered. Some stories are told with medals, others with scars, but the ones that stay with us are whispered in silence by those who lived, lost, and endured. This is Valor Stories, where memory meets dignity and the quiet ones are finally heard. If this story moved you, share it. Let someone else feel the weight of silence. And subscribe for more stories that deserve to be remembered.